All right. What's up, everybody? Back again. Just hanging out for a little bit today because I have to go do other things tonight. Uh, I don't know, some of you may know that I DJ. So I'm going to be doing that a little bit later on to this evening. Um, but I'm gonna adjust my camera a little bit. There we go, to the side there. There, much better. But yeah. So we're just hanging out a little bit today. Gonna do some light streaming. Gonna how's my hopefully my sound is all right. Uh, Trying to check and see. I'm trying to watch Facebook chat today too, just because I've been missing that. So I'll try to keep an eye on that as much as possible as I'm streaming today. But yeah, I got a few things that I want to talk about, guys. We're going to be talking about how leftists are kind of taking over Latin America right now as far as the government's concerned. They're winning elections left and right, and things are looking good down there for the leftist communities. Um, Let me know how my mic sounded, guys, if you can hear me on chat, because I just want to make sure. I've been playing with the volume a little bit, trying to make it less background noise and stuff like that. So we're doing that a little bit more. Yeah. So as I was saying, we've got information on how the left wing forces are regaining ground in Latin America, and then I also was going to discuss, it's almost a year since the January 6th Capitol riots happened. And I want to talk a little bit about the effect that those are still having on America and our democracy right now. So that's something that I definitely am interested in, because there's, it's still affecting us to this day. There's still some things that are wrong, that are happening in society that stem from the eroding of democracy that brought forth. Also, going to do a little bit of climate change conversation today. Talk about the Colorado River and how it's drying up and how that's going to really mess some stuff up here in America. And yeah, then we'll do some fun stuff. We'll watch some Jubilee videos. I've got a video, weird stories video about how he infiltrated a bizarre conspiracy cult. So that'll be fun. But yeah, let's go ahead and drop that intro, huh? All right. Yeah, let's get back to it. So yeah. All right. We've got yeah, let's get back to it. I'm getting some echo here. Yeah. All right. We've got yeah, let's get back to it. There we go. No more echo. There. So first thing I think that we're going to do today, guys, is I really wanted to talk about the state of Latin America and what's going on there. There's been some big leftist wins in Latin America, Central America, and South America, and it's kind of exciting. It's kind of a good way to look at and see what the social issues and the societal changes due to a political climate in a certain region. And I think this will be really interesting to go over with you guys about how that all works out. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. To start off with, we're gonna go ahead and check out this article here. Let's see here if I can get it on here. It's catching the wrong one. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, this is from Al Jazeera News, and it's about how left-wing forces are regaining ground in Latin America. As progressives win key elections from Honduras to Peru, analysts point to changing regional dynamics. So, Latin America's political left is making a resurgence. Analysts have said, as hunger and poverty rise across the region, hit especially hard by the coronavirus pandemic. Honduras is the latest country to vote out a long-serving right-wing government. Xiomara Castro, the country's female president, won the November election with a promise to pull Honduras out of the abyss of a narco dictatorship and corruption. Castro's husband, former Honduran President Manuel Zelaya, was deposed in U.S.-supported coup in 2009 during the tail end of the last wave of socialist government in Latin America a decade ago, a period dubbed the Pink Tide by analysts. So we'll kind of go over what Pink Tide is and everything like that as well. Known for his cowboy hats and thick mustache, Zelaya, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Zelaya was part of the trend encompassing Venezuela's late Hugo Chavez, Bolivia's Evo Morales, and Ecuador's Rafael Correa. Macho leaders eager to leverage natural resource wealth in the name of reducing inequality and fostering social programs. So these guys were basically trying to bolster the natural resources in the area and the wealth in that area to reduce inequality. That sounds a little off to me. It sounds like there's a disconnect there, because usually when that happens in America, it's not the people that get the rewards for that. It's the companies that run the natural resource places like oil and gas companies and things like that. So that tends to be a little bit off for me as far as that's concerned. Let's see here. Castro's win, in a sense, heralds a broader shift across the region as a new generation of left-wingers gain ground, said John Kavanagh, a senior analyst at the Washington-based Institute for Policy Studies. What we have seen in the last 5 years is a progressive tide, but I wouldn't call it pink. Pink refers to a traditional type of socialism. What's emerging here is different, he told Al Jazeera. It's more nuanced, less macho, and more inclined for young voters who care about the environment. There are more green and more feminist currents in these movements. So that's kind of very promising, in my opinion. That we were getting more people in there that really care about equality and social issues and the environment. So this isn't your typical, I know what to do, male, kind of almost misogynistic, chauvinistic tendencies. It's like, this is kind of the more democratized socialism and leftism that I'm definitely more interested in, that I think is going to be better for the United States and for the world. There are, of course, plenty of exceptions to the region's leftward tilt. Ecuador, for instance, elected conservative banker Guillermo Lasso as president in April, but analysis across the political spectrum agreed change is happening. Millennial left. According to a November research note issued by the Dutch multinational bank ING, Latin American politics has already seen a decisive shift to the left in 2021, and it is not over yet. The analysis pointed to 2022 as a big political year for the region, highlighting upcoming elections in Colombia and Brazil. Right-wing incumbents look vulnerable, the bank noted. Along with Honduras, 2021 saw Pedro Castillo narrowly win the presidency in Peru. Previously unknown to many voters, the former rural teacher pledged to better share the country's vast mineral wealth and take more royalties from mining companies he accused of plundering the Andean nation. His popularity has, however, taken a hit amid recent corruption allegations. I haven't read in too much into these corruption allegations as far as that's concerned. I do know that the people were very excited about this guy when he came in. Let me see what these allegations are, because that's interesting. Peru prosecutors to question president amid impeachment threat. Well, let's see here. Questioning as a part of an investigation for the promotion of certain military officers, adding pressure on the socialist leader as legislators weigh in on an impeachment process. Let's see here. 2 ex-military heads say they were relieved of their duties after refusing to promote certain officials, allegedly recommended by Castillo. Well, I mean, that seems like he's playing hardball to me. I mean, I don't know how how much power their military has down there, but I mean, if he thinks that there are people in the military who aren't going to, play ball as far as his policies are concerned, I can see where he would probably want to make some changes. Let's see here. They gave testimony before Peru's public prosecutor late last month. Local newspaper La Repubblica reported on Tuesday. The new allegations come as Castillo already faces the weakest moment of his presidency, which began just 4 months ago. Opposition legislators are pressing for possible impeachment, and his approval rating has hit a record low of 25%. Man, they must have some good propaganda down there. Last week, prosecutors raided the government palace in the capital, Lima, where Castillo's office is located, and found $20,000 in cash in a bathroom allegedly belonging to a senior advisor. Castillo fired the advisor and said his administration is committed to fighting corruption. One thing Pedro Castillo had going for him as president of Peru was identity as authentic man of the people, including absence of personal links to corruption, Lima-based journalist Simeon Tegel wrote on Twitter. Now, just as his approval hits 25%, that image is shattered. Hard to see him dodging impeachment, however unconstitutional. Yeah. Man, they really work hard to tear down leftist leaders when they get into power, especially, and the U.S. usually supports things like that, which is kind of funny. Not funny, but funny. You know what I mean? Let's see here. In Chile, traditionally one of the region's most stable and wealthy countries, 35-year-old Gabriel Boric, a former student protest leader, held a polling lead over his far-right rival before a runoff presidential vote set for December 19th. Boric, who is campaigning to reduce inequality and tackle climate change, is a prime example of what Valeria Vasquez, a Mexico City-based analyst with the consultancy firm Control Risk, dubs the millennial left. This new millennial left has the base of old forces, she told Al Jazeera, referring to left-wing movements such as trade, unions, and social political parties. They are starting to rebuild around the historical base using other mechanisms, governance via Twitter, for example, to help gain power. Building on that older base with social media will be key for the biggest prize of all, Brazil's election year next year. Let's see here. So this is kind of like, you see this in America quite a bit as well, with the pushback from the right and places, from conservative politicians and things like that. For instance, you saw that with Nina Turner and her congressional run, where she was ahead tremendously in the polls. Tremendously. Like, probably about, I think it was like 16 points or something like that, was ahead in the polls. And then her opponent, who was in the primary with her, it was a special election because the congressman currently in there had retired. So basically, her opponent decided to take a bunch of corporate money from, you guessed it, Republicans and corporate interests. So what that did is they ended up buying massive amounts of television ad space and things like that, and started basically calling Nina out for doing things that she didn't do that were the exact opposite of what her policies and beliefs are. And so they basically demonized her and made her the exact opposite in the public's eyes. And it dropped her approval rating quite a bit. And she ended up losing the race by a very small margin. But you see this all over the world. Anytime anything progressive or leftist pops up, they tend to do this. Let's see here. Likely pitting the incumbent far-right former Army captain Jair Bolsonaro against former left-wing president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the contest will offer voters in Latin America's most populous nation a stark choice. The common dynamic between Chile and Brazil, we see mass movements of people rising up to reclaim their democracies and constitutions. David Adler, a Mexico City-based coordinator with the Progressive International Advocacy Network, told Al Jazeera. In both cases, we see candidates of reaction threatening to depress those movements. Again, as I was saying, you get that push back in those situations in a major way. Parts of the old guard remain on stage. Yet even as a new group of left-wing politicians gain ground, some remnants of the old guard of Cold War style authoritarians have not fully left the stage. In Nicaragua, 76-year-old Daniel Ortega secured a fourth consecutive term in November in an election many observers criticized as neither free nor fair. Ortega battled the Somoza dictatorship with the Sandinista rebels through the 1970s, but today has allied himself with conservative elements in the powerful Catholic Church, backed a total ban on abortion, and jailed political opponents, including some of his old Sandinista comrades. Oh, this guy sounds like a peach. What a sellout. Ortega paints his opponents as gringo stooges who would sell the country out to the U.S. Yeah. The weird thing is that the U.S. probably likes this guy quite a bit. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro has presided over the Western Hemisphere's worst refugee crisis, forcing 5.9 million people to flee the oil-rich country in search of food and security, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. According to Kavanaugh, no one in the region's emerging left is campaigning to govern in the model of Maduro or Ortega. Part of what ended the last pink tide was a big drop in commodity prices starting in mid-2014, analysis said. Left-wing governments in places such as Brazil and Ecuador had tied their policies and economic models to the extraction of natural resources. When prices dropped, economies contracted, and angry voters blamed incumbents. Which is kind of a good thing for progressives on the left, because we can push for greener energy and things like that in those countries. and hopefully we get some representation down there. Sounds like we are, to make those things happen. In the past pink tide, natural resources were more important, Vasquez said, adding that while they still matter to the new crop of left-wingers, they are less of a focus. Standard electoral cycles where voters get tired of one party or ideology and vote for their opponents also likely played a role in the region's rightward drift several years ago, analysis said. But as the political pendulum swings back to the left, observers far beyond the region are watching as the new dynamics unfold. Latin America is so influential in the imagination of progressives around the world, going back to Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, Kavanaugh said. There is a rising green tide in Latin America that has met the pink tide. It will be a bit different in every country, but it will be interesting to see what emerges. So, why is this important, guys? The reason that this is important to us is because, obviously, the geographical location of the countries we're speaking of Latin America, when you see people are taking to the left in the way that they are in countries below us to the south of us, and how that's building and building. And you can kind of see some of those changes here, but you see also in both places the divide and how much the right is fighting back tooth and nail to get rid of us and to silence the voices of the left and the progressives. You kind of see that we're not alone in this fight, that there are ways that we could combine forces with places that are close to us to kind of bolster the ideals of leftist and progressive communities. So I think this is really important to keep an eye on. And it's different than you would see with other Cold War socialist regimes, because again, like they said, that was all about commodities. And this is less so because you're seeing a lot of movement towards ideas of fighting against climate change and equality for all people in a way that has not been in the past in pink tides before. So it's quite interesting, and we should definitely keep an eye on it. It's something that could affect us in a major way, and if we keep an eye on it, it'll be less easy for right-wing conservatives here and abroad and down below us to basically sabotage the movements of the progressives and the right. So international politics are extremely important, and I think we should keep a better eye on them, definitely. So with that said, I think we're going to move on. Like I said, I don't have a lot of time today, guys, but I did want to jump on and do a little bit today of the streaming for you. I'm really hoping my mics sound good, because this is something that I've really worked on today that I wanted to get done. How y'all doing? Hopefully things are going well out in your world. I hope that everybody had a happy new year, and that you're in a positive place in your mind, and that you're trying to better prepare yourself for the following year, the year that's ahead of us. And yeah, there was a lot of crazy shit that happened last year. And one of the craziest things that happened almost a year ago, a couple days shy of a year ago. And obviously I'm talking about the riot on the Capitol on January 6th, the insurrection. And since that happened, there have been some people who have been holding on to the big lie about the election and several other things that happened, and several other conspiracy theories and pushes towards authoritarianism that you can obviously see in our culture. And I mean, it's happening all around the world. There's a pushback towards authoritarianism. I can't talk today. What the hell is wrong with me? You know, there's a definite pushback going towards authoritarianism and fascism. And I think a lot of that has to do with the climate of America, because, I mean, we in the past have been somewhat of a stabilizing force in the world, even though we did have done some corrupt things for a very long time. We have been a stabilizing force in many ways, and we're losing that democratic stability that we've had. So I'm going to share this with you. The riot in the Republic. 1 year after a pro-Trump mob attacked the Capitol, experts, historians, and politicians warn of a democracy still at risk. So, America survived the January 6th Capitol riot, but the explosion of political violence exposed the Republic's fragility. Oh gosh, let's start over with that. America survived the January 6th Capitol riot, but the explosion of political violence exposed the Republic's fragility. A year later, after an impeachment and amid federal investigations, the risk to Americans' system of governance remains high, according to many elected officials and advocates. Etched in the granite of national memory, January 6th has become shorthand for an ongoing and existential battle over fair elections, the integrity of democratic institutions, and the abuse of power. But as savage, bloody, and traumatic as the riot was, it is only one piece of a fight that is now unfolding across the country in local election boards, state legislatures, courtrooms, and halls of Congress. Now, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, the January 6th was kind of a catalyst for several things happening. The big lie was a catalyst for several things happening. You see, even before January 6th, it was set up so that judges all over the country were being appointed by a right-wing regime that was run by Donald Trump. And this wasn't just the Supreme Court, which is actually threatening Roe versus Wade right now. It was also district judges and local judges across the country that were getting elected and put into power by Trump's regime. And so therefore, they've got a huge advantage in our judicial system right now. And especially in red states, they've got a huge advantage over redistricting, which will allow them to draw lines on the map so that it lessens the voting power of marginalized groups such as Black communities and LGBT communities. And not only that, but it also splits many of the democratically run districts so that it lessens their vote from district to district. So you're seeing this a lot. And it's a big threat to our democracy. So continuing on, at the center of it all is former President Donald Trump and his biggest, most persistent lies about what happened on November 6, 2020. His propaganda campaign, which insists against extensive evidence that the election was stolen from him, led supporters to storm the Capitol and most GOP lawmakers to stand by him. That lie also furnished fuel for nearly 3 dozen new Republican written state laws restricting voting rights and countless bids for office by Republicans who say they believe it. The Republic has been pushed to its limit, and it's still teetering on the brink, said Joseph Ellis, the Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer of the original American revolutionaries. Focusing on this as genuine inflection point in American history comparable to the Civil War and the Revolution is not fanciful. It's absolutely historically correct, he said. We are facing historic crisis. The fate of the Republic really is at stake. And a lot of people downplay this. You know, there's a lot of downplay of how much trouble democracy is in this country right now. Because we don't see, the news doesn't cover from state to state what's going on. It's hard for everybody to cover every single instance of a change in voting laws and things like that across the country. But it is happening, and we're seeing it more and more. We're seeing the changes in institutions across the country as far as our political institutions, and not for the better. If that is true, it is in part because a large share of the population has lost faith, or perhaps never had faith, in the ability of democratic institutions to deliver for them. And this is really a feature, not a bug, for most people on the right, most corporate interests. Because if you keep the people losing faith, they can basically outshout most of the country. They can push their policies into place because nobody else is paying attention, that they've lost faith and just try to move on with their lives. But what a lot of people don't realize is that their freedoms are slowly being eroded away, as well as their economic stability in this country because of that. So it's something that we all need to pay more attention to. Trump fed that vein of mistrust from the moment he became a candidate for the presidency in 2015, and then framed his 2020 defeat as evidence that the American political system is corrupt. The solution for hundreds of his supporters was to try to physically stop Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's victory. We came perilously close to not being able to certify the election, which meant that was uncharted territory for our government, and it could have been potentially left for the same people in charge until we worked it out. Representative Benny Thompson, Democratic Mississippi, chairman of the special House committee investigating the attack on the Capitol, said in an interview with NBC News. His panel, which has interviewed more than 300 witnesses and plans to conduct a series of public hearings in the coming months, is looking closely at financing for the Save America rally, which led to the riot. The actions and inaction of Trump and his allies, and what roles far-right anti-government extremist groups such as the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and Three Percenters played in fomenting violence. Now, I hear a lot of arguments about this. I hear, Trump didn't explicitly tell them to break into the White House and, break into people's offices and stuff. Here's the thing about coercion and about people having a hero complex for somebody that is corrupt and frankly a bad leader like that. And that is that he has said so much leading up to the point of the January 6th riots about how the left, the communists and the socialist left, are stealing America, that he rallied up everybody in a frenzy. And not only that, but you see things behind the scenes like leaders in the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and things like that, and other politicians and QAnon and several other different groups, basically telling people it's a do or die situation. Like, we need to take action in ways that are outside of the law, for instance. And so that's where that came in. You had a lot of people who were rallying together to fight against what they thought was the end of our country. And Donald Trump added to that insecurity and that fear, as did several other groups. But Donald Trump was at the spearhead for it. And he empowered people, emboldened these people also by not denouncing things like QAnon or the KKK and other groups that had come out in the open a lot more during his presidency. So you got all those people riled up. In the meantime, when all of this stuff was going on in the foreground, you know, BLM versus Proud Boys, all of that, and there was so much division in the culture and society, you had Donald Trump and his administration doing as much as they possibly could to put judges and people in place that would allow them to destabilize democracy in such a way that they could make America a much more authoritarian and fascist place. So they did that, and now it's continuing to happen because January 6th happened. It's still in the news. Everybody's still talking about it. And at the same time, you've got people around the country who are legislators, Republican and right-wing legislators, and Republican and right-wing judges, pushing through policies and pushing through changes in voting blocks, things such as this, in order to basically take the country away from the people who are in the majority, which are people in the middle and on the left. And I'm not talking about corporate middle like they are in the Democratic Party, like Nancy Pelosi and those guys, or Joe Manchin. For God forbid, he is not in the middle. That guy's far right. But they're basically undermining democracy so that they can keep their profits up, keep themselves in power, and keep things working in their favor, which will eventually erode democracy, erode Americans' faith in the system, and eventually probably lead to some sort of civil unrest to the point that we haven't seen as of yet, which is saying something because we've seen a lot of civil unrest in the past 4 years. So, further on, it says, I'm concerned about some of the information that we are collecting, that the potential for criminal referrals is there, Thompson said, adding that he is hesitant to finalize that conclusion until committee lawyers have assessed all available information. Our first task is to look at the facts and circumstances that brought about January 6th. If, in the committee's review, we find something that the committee and staff feels warrants a criminal referral, we will not hesitate one scintilla in making that referral. We are not shrinking violets. I certainly hope so, because it does seem that the Democratic Party is very good at shrinking and shying away and fighting about as well as a wet noodle. It doesn't happen very often to where I see them actually put up a fight for anything. I mean, look at the Build Back Better plan. I mean, this was Joe Biden's agenda, his complete agenda, and he did nothing to push it through. He didn't play hardball at all. And so, therefore, we lost on that. Manchin got his way, and all of the corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans, which is all of them, got their way. And now the people of this country are going to suffer more because of that. Let's see here. Just trying to. Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit more here. So far, Trump has paid no legal or political price for what many believe was an attempted coup. The House determined that he incited the riot when it impeached him in January, but the Senate acquitted him. The Justice Department has not changed or charged him with any crimes related to the riot. And the House has not yet asked the Attorney General to do so. Trump's grip on the Republican Party remains ironclad. That is evident both in polling and in GOP candidates' fear of his ire. Yeah, they're simps like a motherfucker for him, still to this day. Even though, he had said some stuff about getting vaccines and people were mad at him about that, but for the most part, he's still the face of the Republican Party. Two Republican members of the House, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois and Anthony Gonzalez of Ohio, announced that they will not seek re-election after Trump vowed political retribution for voting to impeach him last year. But while Trump builds the foundation of another possible campaign for presidency, the riot has disrupted thousands of lives. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died of a stroke after clashing with rioters. And two other officers, Howard Liebengood of the Capitol Police and Jeffrey Smith of the D.C. Metro Police, both of whom were at the Capitol, died by suicide in the days after the attack. That's ridiculously sad that this happened. Ashley Babbitt, we all remember that name, I'm sure. A 35-year-old rioter was shot and killed as she tried to break into the chamber adjacent to the House floor. More than 725 people had been arrested in connection with the riot, according to the Justice Department. More than 150 pleaded guilty. About 70 have had their cases adjudicated, including 31 who were sentenced to jail time. The Justice Department says, in the harshest punishment handed down so far, Robert Palmer of Florida was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in prison for assaulting police officers with a fire extinguisher, a plank, and a pole. What prosecutors and House investigators have not done is show that Trump or his top lieutenants helped plan the attack on the Capitol rather than just the rally down the street that preceded it. This is where I have a bit of an issue. Because, there's a reason that Trump didn't pardon any of those guys in his last days. There's a reason why Trump just let them take the fall, because it's going to pad him a little bit. It's going to protect him from getting any sort of trouble on his part, for getting any sort of retribution by the law on his part, even though it is very clear that it was his rhetoric and his words in general that caused many people to do this. Not only that, I do believe that many of his administration and some of his closest followers actually coordinated with people behind the scenes and leaders of the movements and the groups that were going down there in order to make this happen. And if you follow the dots, you can really see that. The Democratic-run House is taking the lead in searching for such proof, and it has been met with resistance from Trump, who is taking his claim of executive privilege to the Supreme Court and many of his advisors. The interference may be designed to try to run out the clock on the congressional probe, which will be discontinued if Republicans win control of the House in November's midterm elections. That's exactly what's going on here too, is they're doing everything they can to push this down the line, farther and farther down the line, so that when Republicans likely take over, because Biden kind of fucking screwed things up without following through with any of the things that he said he was going to follow through with. It's just going to run out the clock, and these guys are going to be let off scot-free. It's really depressing. Steve Bannon, a former aide to Trump, is being prosecuted for contempt of Congress because of his failure to testify before and provide documents to the House Investigative Committee. In December, the House adopted a resolution recommending that the Justice Department charge former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, himself a former House member, with contempt of Congress. And the committee is also seeking information from sitting members of Congress, including Representatives Scott Perry and Jim Jordan, who are close to the former president. For many Black Americans and other voters of color, the riot represented a white nationalist backlash against their votes for Biden and a flashpoint in ongoing Republican efforts to limit their political power by taking control of the machinery of state elections. And this is still going on. Like I mentioned earlier, there are many people in society who are getting their votes downplayed, getting their votes erased, basically, by legislation that's happening right now that stems from Trump's big lie about the election. They're trying to do everything they can to rig things. This was the worst of America that we'd ever seen, said Martin Luther King III, son of the slain civil rights leader whose nonviolent demonstrations propelled democratic change. This did not happen independently. It was clearly promoted by him, meaning Trump. So how did the riot unfold? For nearly 2 months after the election was called for, Biden, Trump, and his allies worked to undermine public faith in the results. Trump pleaded with the Justice Department and state election officials to overturn the outcome over and over and over again. He made phone call after phone call. There's recordings of him making phone calls to try to bribe or coerce several local politicians, local legislators, to overturn the elections, the votes in their state. But as the date of the congressional certification drew closer, he trained his focus on then Vice President Mike Pence. One of Trump's legal advisors, John Eastman, drafted a memo explaining how Pence might try to use his constitutionally mandated role in the proceedings at the Capitol to block the certification of electors, a process that had been largely been viewed as perfunctory. So this is, I wonder what Pence was thinking about during this time. He's like, oh, so what are you telling me I have to do now? Like, what do you expect me to do? He's like, oh no. And he had to make a big decision at that point, I believe. You know, that's something that wasn't going to go down the way anybody wanted it, really. So yeah, like I said, Pence considered the plan but decided against it. On the morning of January 6th, before speaking at a Save America rally just outside the White House gates, Trump tweeted a message urging Pence to execute Eastman's extra-legal stratagem. When Trump spoke around midday, he blasted Pence repeatedly. His friend Rudy Giuliani already had called for trial by combat. Trial by combat, see those types of inflammatory remarks from Trump's political adversaries. During Trump's speech, members of the Proud Boys began making their way from the Washington Monument to the Capitol. Trump encouraged the crowd to fight like hell and to march the 1.5 miles to the Capitol to peacefully protest the election results. And he threw that in there at the last minute. Before 1 p.m., the mob at the Capitol began breaching barriers as Trump continued speaking. Hundreds streamed towards the Capitol, joining the increasingly violent crowd that had morphed from protest to riot. Pence entered the House chamber at 1 p.m. The proceedings in the chamber unfolded quickly. 12 minutes after Pence began, Representative Paul Gosar, representative for Arizona, and Senator Ted Cruz, representative of Texas, objected to Arizona's electors. Outside of the Capitol, police tried to fend off rioters, many of whom struck officers or sprayed them with irritants. Shortly after 2 p.m., rioters broke into the Capitol. Pence, now in the Senate chamber, was whisked away by security. Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman distracted rioters and drew them away from Pence and the Senate chamber. Outside the building, chants "Hang Mike Pence" echoed as a gallows was erected. This is deep, man. Like, this was not like a normal demonstration. I mean, these guys were out for blood. What do you think would have actually happened? What do you think would have been the reactions? What do you think would have been the situation if they had actually gotten a hold of Mike Pence and hung him from those gallows right in front of the Capitol building in modern day America? Just think about that for just a few seconds. Like, what do you think? How would that have changed things? And I wonder what Pence was thinking about that time too. Like, did he think he was going to get publicly executed? I mean, I would have been a little bit scared. Let's see here. Okay, until January 6th, the Capitol was not just a beacon of global democracy, the physical manifestation of a representative form of government, but a fortress and a sanctuary for tens of thousands of people who work in or visit its labyrinthine complex every day. There are lawmakers, legislative aides, journalists, police officers, groundskeepers, tour guides, cafeteria workers, engineers, architects, artists, parliamentarians, and interested citizens. That day, a building that felt eerily empty because of the ongoing pandemic became overrun with rioters. Trump egged them on. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and the Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent and inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify, Trump tweeted as the supporters ransacked the Capitol. So he was egging them on during this situation as it was going on. Meadows received text messages from Donald Trump Jr. and several Fox News hosts that pleaded with him to get Trump to denounce the rioting. Condemn this shit, Trump Jr. wrote. It's gone too far and gotten out of hand. Rioters broke into the Senate chamber, swarming the desks where so much of America's legislative history has been made, and rifling through papers and infiltrated the office of Speaker Nancy Pelosi shortly before 3 p.m. Babbitt was part of a crowd that pressed forward into the Speaker's lobby, a long anteroom that adjoins the House chamber. Officer Michael Byrd defended a position near the wood-framed double doors. After rioters smashed glass panes in the doors, and with Babbitt apparently trying to get into the lobby, he fired a single shot into her shoulder. She would die from that wound. More than an hour later, shortly after 4 p.m., Pence got on the phone with a Defense Department official and pleaded with him to clear the Capitol. Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made a similar appeal to Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley to intervene. About 10 minutes later, Trump released a video in which he repeated the lie and the election had been stolen, but said his supporters, "Go home, we love you." Republicans and Democrats hid under chairs and in secret offices. I mean, look at this. It's crazy. There was a moment amid sounds and screams of busting glass that Representative Dean Phillips, Democrat of Minnesota, considered leaping from the observation balcony above the House floor. He was trapped with about 20 of his Democratic colleagues. On the main level, there are fewer entry points. Capitol security officers with guns drawn and small cadre of Republican lawmakers worked to stop the mob from breaching the chamber. But the second floor gallery is dotted with doorways, and the lawmakers that were uncertain that police could hold off the rioters. Wow. So it goes on to basically explain how dramatic everything was on that day and what had taken place that was such an out of the normal thing for the Capitol building and for America as a whole. Let's see here. So they convene on the night of the riot to finish certifying Biden's election and send a message that, as Senator Mitt Romney put it, lawmakers would not be intimidated out of their jobs. Yet the political violence did not stop most Republican House members and a handful of Senate Republicans from objecting again to the election results. Man, these guys are relentless. Absolutely relentless. Let's see here. Well, that's an interesting look. So 2 weeks after the riot, Biden was sworn in as president on the same Capitol steps where the mob had fought the police. Democracy is so fragile, and at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed, Biden said. So now, on this hallowed ground where just days ago violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. But it really wasn't a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, obviously. We look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. Those are big words, Joe Biden, but then you just kind of slumped away. You kind of slumped away from what we needed to do in order to make this a better place for Americans. A year later, the nation and its government remains fractured. The Democratic-led House's quick effort to impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection put on full display a partisan chasm that would only widen. On January 13th, 232 House members, all of the Democrats and 10 of the Republicans, voted for the single article of impeachment. By the time the Senate could arrange its trial and vote, Trump had been out of office for 3 weeks. 7 Republicans joined all 50 Democrats in voting to convict Trump, well short of the 2/3 majority necessary. Even as he voted against conviction, Senator Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican, called Trump practically and morally responsible for the riot. But in May, McConnell blocked the establishment of an independent commission to conduct an investigation into the attack. He doesn't want the stain on his party. So this keeps on going and going. There's been a committee that has been trying to investigate this for quite some time now. So the committee, in addition to hundreds of witnesses' interviews, has received more than 35,000 pages of records, collected more than 250 substantive tips, and sent 52 subpoenas, and launched contempt of Congress referrals against Bannon and Meadows. The committee is backed up against one date on the calendar, January 3rd, 2023, which was yesterday when the Congress is sworn in. But in an important way, its work has barely begun. Committee officials hope that they will be able to begin a round of hearings in the spring that will give the public a better understanding of who bears responsibility for the attack and how it was carried out. So this is continuing on. For quite some time now, and it will continue to go on for quite a bit longer. And while this is going on, the country is being slowly disintegrated. The democracy of this country is being slowly disintegrated by right-wing politicians and other groups, and by changing election laws and changing laws that have been codified in our legal system for years and years, and lessening the voting power of many marginalized groups and many working class people. So, I think I'll go ahead and end the segment there, because needs to be constantly watched, and we're going to have to do a lot to make sure that they don't get away with this. We need to pay attention and make sure that they're not eroding democracy to the point where we can't fix it anymore. We're in big trouble, guys, as far as that's concerned. So, that's a major thing of what I wanted to talk about today, was that I do have a couple more things that I wanted to discuss. I'm really not trying to stream for that long today, though. I've got work to do tonight, so we're going to go for about another hour. Maybe we can get in a couple more of these articles. So this is kind of scary. U.S. reaches 1 million daily COVID cases amid spread of Omicron variant. Washington, D.C. and Florida have seen the largest jump in new cases in the last 2 weeks. Omicron's kicking ass right now. It's really putting the hurt on hospitals around the country. Really doing some messed up things to the rhetoric around the country as well. Everybody's kind of flailing, even Republicans. And, they can't admit that this isn't a problem at this point. They still try, but they really can't. So, the United States hit 1 million new COVID-19 cases on Monday, according to data compiled by NBC News, underscoring the threat of the Omicron variant as the third year of the pandemic gets underway. Washington, D.C. and Florida have been the largest jump in new cases in the last 2 weeks. Washington saw COVID cases increase by 902% in that time period, while cases in Florida went up 744%, according to an NBC News analysis of state and local health data. The record-breaking single-day total could be a reflection of delayed reporting, as a number of states did not announce data on New Year's Eve and during the holiday weekend. And children are being hospitalized with COVID at an alarming rate, data shows. So let's take a look at this real quick.
In the week leading up to Christmas, pediatric COVID cases reached nearly 200,000. But troubling new numbers from the American Academy of Pediatrics show an even more dramatic statistic. The very next week, a 60% jump in cases of children getting COVID, more than 300,000.
Damn. That's crazy, I guess. But kids aren't at risk for COVID, as many on the right like to say.
Never seen anything like what we're experiencing now.
According to an NBC tally, the case numbers are leading to record hospitalizations of children with COVID in 9 different states. And while some of those children are being treated for other conditions, of those children are being treated for other tally, the case numbers are leading to record hospitalizations of children with COVID in 9
different states. Okay, so let's look at these states. Let's see here. We've got Connecticut, red state. Georgia, red state. Illinois, purple. Kentucky, definitely red state. Ohio, purple. Missouri, definitely red. Maine, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania, I'm not so sure about. But as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of them are either purple, or six out of the 9 are either purple or red states at the very least.
different states. And while some of those children are being treated for other conditions when they test positive, doctors say a significant number are getting serious cases of COVID.
COVID in a very short period of time has become one of the leading medical causes of death for children in this country. So I think it's about time that we stopped downplaying the significance of COVID for children.
The Omicron variant is even having an impact on the unborn. Holy Cross in Fort Lauderdale is temporarily shutting down its maternity ward because of a surge in COVID cases among the hospital's staff. At the Texas Children's Hospital, there were 0 pediatric cases when December began. Now there are 70.
Today's hospitalization numbers have surpassed our peak of patients during the recent Delta surge.
The problem, say health experts, low vaccination rates for young children.
Yeah, I mean, Omicron is extremely virulent. I mean, it transmits very easily, and you have kids, under a certain age aren't able to get the vaccine whatsoever.
Beginning to vaccinate our 5 to 11-year-olds, but when you look at who's been in the hospital, it's actually those 5 to 11-year-olds who have not yet received the vaccine.
As the Omicron variant has surged in recent weeks, the FDA authorized Pfizer boosters for children ages 12 to 15 and third doses for those 5 to 11 with compromised immune systems. Some parents hopeful the extra dose of protection will help their kids stay in school.
I just would like it if everybody felt confident in the booster and all the kids got vaccinated, because then I think, I don't only want my kids to be safe.
Another semester of uncertainty for school children, with families facing difficult choices in the weeks ahead.
Later. Back to closing schools and things like that. So, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that the Omicron variant now accounts for up to 95% of U.S. test samples received last week, according to model projections. But that projection could differ from later estimates. Dr. Tedros, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, warned last month that the Omicron and Delta variants were fueling an alarming trend. I am highly concerned that Omicron, being highly transmissible and spreading at the same time as Delta, is leading to a tsunami of cases, Tedros said at a news conference in Geneva on December 29th. So you can see, look at this chart, man. So this is March. All of these cases down, and then boom, right there, a million. However, even as U.S. cases or accounts rose in recent weeks, reported deaths do not appear to be surging, which is a good thing. It's more virulent but less lethal, it seems like. Suggesting that Omicron leads to a more mild form of COVID, especially among people who have been vaccinated. The general trend I'm seeing is if you're boosted and you get COVID, you really just at worst end up with bad cold symptoms. It's not like before when you were coughing, couldn't say sentences, and were short of breath. Dr. Matthew Bai, an emergency medicine physician in New York City's Mount Sinai, Queens, told NBC last month. Now, this is the thing about this, though, is even though it's not killing as many people, especially if you're vaccinated, people are still getting hospitalized for this. So it's still overrunning the hospital system, which is costing deaths that are not necessarily particularly related to COVID too, because of the amount of people that have to wait in the emergency room to get tested or to get treatment for whatever their illness is. So that's an interesting side effect of this, a horrible side effect of this. There are obviously exceptions. Like if you start with a very weakened immune system, your immune system response won't be as strong with a booster. But in your average person, a booster is definitely going to make a difference. The average number of daily hospitalizations in the U.S. was 92,281 as of Monday, an increase of 35% in the last 2 weeks. In a separate development Tuesday, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan declared a 30-day state of emergency to combat a rise in COVID cases, mobilizing 1,000 members of the Maryland National Guard to help state and local health officials. So this is no joke, man. It's coming back with a vengeance. Maybe not as lethal, but I mean, if you're killing or if you're infecting 902% more people in a given state, then it's only logical that there's still going to be the same amount of deaths that we've been having, at least, right? So it's not like it's dropping the amount of deaths are dropping, they're just not surging. So it's still a problem. And I think this is something that we need to pay attention to a little bit more in the coming days, because not only that, but Omicron with the infection rate is causing vast numbers of incubators for the COVID strain to mutate again and maybe come out with a more virulent strain. Now, the trend isn't necessarily showing it getting worse, but it is a possibility, especially with so many people incubating the virus. So take care of yourselves, guys. Protect yourselves. Make sure that you are distancing and that you're getting your vaccinations and staying away from people who aren't vaccinated. Yeah. Let's be safe and let's help each other out a little bit, huh? So, oh man, we got a little bit of time left here, guys. Why don't we do something? Let's see here. I do want to talk shortly and briefly about climate change and what's happening with the Colorado River. I watched a video recently, Answers with Joe. If you guys haven't seen Answers with Joe, he's absolutely amazing. He does a lot of great science videos, and just very interesting topics a lot of times. So I highly suggest going to check him out as well. It's Joe Scott, I believe, is his channel. But the Colorado River is drying up, and is drying up fast. And that is bad news. Bad news for something like 15% of the population of the United States of America, which is a pretty large number. So let me take a look at this article here. 40 million people rely on the Colorado River. It's drying up fast. Let's see here. On a 110-degree day several years ago, surrounded by piles of sand and rock in the desert outside Las Vegas, I stepped into a yellow cage large enough to fit 3 standing adults and was lowered 600 feet through a black hole into the ground. There at the bottom, amid pooling water and dripping rock, was an enormous machine driving a cone-shaped drill into the earth. The machine was carving a cavernous 3-mile tunnel beneath the bottom of the nation's largest freshwater reservoir, Lake Mead. Lake Mead, a reservoir formed by the construction of the Hoover Dam in 1930s, is one of the most important pieces of infrastructure on the Colorado River, supplying fresh water to Nevada, California, Arizona, and Mexico. The reservoir hasn't been full since 1983. In 2000, it began a steady decline caused by apocal drought. On my visit in 2015, the lake was just about 40% full. A chalky ring on the surrounding cliffs marked where the water line once reached. Like the residue on the empty bathtub, the tunnel far below represented Nevada's latest salvo in a simmering water war. The construction of $1.4 billion drainage hole to ensure that if the lake ever ran dry, Las Vegas could get the very last drop. Yeah, that's really crazy. They're stretching it. They're trying to preserve as much as possible. For years, experts in the American West have predicted that unless the steady overuse of water was brought under control, the Colorado River would no longer be able to support all of the 40 million people who depend on it. Over the past 2 decades, Western states took incremental steps to save water, signed agreements to share what was left, and then, like Las Vegas, did what they could do to protect themselves. But they believed the tipping point was still a long way off. They were wrong. Look at that. So there's where the water line was. You kind of see that there. It's crazy. Like the record-breaking heat waves and the ceaseless megafires, the decline of the Colorado River has been faster than expected. This year, even though rainfall and snowpack high up in the Rocky Mountains were near normal levels, the parched soils and plants stricken by intense heat absorbed much of the water, and inflows to the Lake Powell were around 1/4 of their usual amount. The Colorado's flow has already declined by nearly 20% on average from its flow through the 1900s. And if the current rate of warming continues, loss could well be 50% by the end of this century. Now, what's that mean? That means hell is about to break loose in these areas. It means that there's going to be a lot of problems for the people who rely on these water reservoirs. Americans are about to face all sorts of difficult choices about how and where to live as the climate continues to heat up. So see, this is, most people think of climate migration coming from coastal regions where there's hurricanes and things like that happening. But you don't think about the places where there's going to be major droughts and what's going to happen to those displaced people as well. States will be forced to choose which coastlines to abandon as sea levels rise, which wildfire-prone suburbs to retreat from, and which small towns cannot afford new infrastructure to protect against floods or heat. What to do in parts of the country that are losing their essential supply of water may not turn out to be the first among those choices. The Colorado River's enormous significance extends well beyond the American West. In addition to providing water for the people of 7 states, 29 federally recognized tribes of northern Mexico, its water is used to grow everything from the carrots stacked on supermarket shelves in New Jersey to the beef in a hamburger served in Massachusetts diner. The power generated by its 2 biggest dams, the Hoover and Glen Canyon, is marketed across an electricity grid that reaches from Arizona to Wyoming. So this is a widespread problem. You might think, okay, well, we don't live in that area, so we're not, it's not going to bother us. But what about all those people that gets displaced from there and have to move and take up other resources? What about the resources that are developed there in these places that will no longer be able to be developed there? So making the rise of food costs higher, and causing shortages in vegetables and meat and all kinds of different produce products and things like that. It's really going to cause some issues. The former declaration of a water crisis arrived days after the Census Bureau released numbers showing that even as the drought worsened over recent decades, hundreds of thousands more people had moved to the regions that depend on the Colorado. That you see Denver and several other places that have exploded in population, a lot of because things like marijuana legalization and things such as that nature, which is why, again, they should probably legalize it around the country so they're not having to push everybody who is an advocate for such things into one area, right? Phoenix expanded more over the past 10 years than any other large American city, while smaller urban areas across Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and California each ranked among the fastest growing places in the country. The river's water supports roughly 15 million more people today than it did when Bill Clinton was elected president in 1992. These statistics suggested that the climate crisis and explosive development in the West are on a collision course, and it raises the question, what happens next? Well, we can kind of extrapolate what's going to happen next. A fucking hellscape of mass migration and craziness in this country, a lack of food distribution. It's you know, and people call people alarmists for really being scared about this kind of stuff, but it's not alarmist at all. It's definitely there's definitely some problems here going on that we need to address quickly, or we're in a lot of trouble. Since about 70% of water delivered from Colorado River goes to growing crops, not to people in cities, the next step will likely be to demand large-scale reductions for farmers and ranchers across millions of acres of land, forcing wrenching choices about which crops to grow and for whom. An omen that many of Americans' food-generating regions might ultimately have to shift someplace else as the climate warms. California, so far shielded from major cuts, has already agreed to reductions that will take in effect if the drought worsens, but in May it may be asked to do more. Its enormous share of the river, which it uses to irrigate crops across the Imperial Valley and for Los Angeles and other cities, will be in the crosshairs when negotiators over a diminished Colorado begin. The Imperial Irrigation District, in the Imperial Irrigation District, there is the largest single water rights holder from the basin and has been especially resistant to compromise over the river. It did not sign the drought contingency plan, laying out cuts that other big players on the Colorado River system agreed to in 2019. So New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming, states in the river's upper basin, will most likely face pressure to use less water. Should that happen, places like Utah that hoped that one day support faster development and economic growth with their share of the river may have to surrender their ambition. So you guys can see where this is going, right? Like, it's being eroded and dried up to the point where it's going to affect not just them, but the whole nation in ways that we can't even completely fathom yet. So this is something we definitely need to keep an eye on, because and we need to make some changes. We need to start looking at alternative forms of energy. We need to start working on mitigation plans to help with displaced people, and to figure out ways to supplement our food supply. And we're going to need to figure out just how we're going to survive all of this. So it's not a joke. Climate change isn't something that may happen. It's something that's happening right now. And we really need to get off our asses and do something about it, and stop listening to people who are saying that we're alarmists for saying what's actually happening in the world with these things. It's scary, for sure. But we'll go ahead and move on from that. We've got a lot of bad news today. I'm sorry, guys. We've been talking about a lot of bad things today. And a lot of scary things. And yeah. I think that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that we have to pay attention to, and that we have to think about critically in order to make sure that we don't completely fail as a species, or even closer to us, fail as a country, fail to progress in a proper way so that all of our citizens will be safe and sound and have places to live and food in their cupboards, and the ability to provide for their families. And those things are dwindling more and more as we go along. So it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye out for. you know, I think we're gonna maybe talk about this later, as far as the people leaving their jobs in America. I did want to talk about it, but I'm running out of time. I've only had 2 hours to stream today, and that time is running low as of right now. So I do want to do something fun for you guys. We're going to go over a video. I have not even seen this yet, so I don't know exactly what to think, but I came across it on Discord, and I thought it would be a little fun thing that we could do in order to see, to add some levity to this stream, because it's been pretty doomer so far. So here, we'll go ahead and take a look at this. This is from Oki's Weird Stories, who I've recently subscribed to. And this one is how I infiltrated the bizarre conspiracy cult. All right, let's see.
Okay.
My fellow humans, I am Benjamin Fulford, spokesperson for the White Dragon Society. With me here is Chodoin Daikaku. He's the head of the world's martial arts societies, and if necessary, and in an emergency, he can summon up an army of 200 million people worldwide.
200 million people? What the fuck? He's ahead of all of the people who know martial arts. He's got that on lock, man. Jesus Christ.
Here on my right is Alexander Romanov, who is a grandmaster of an Illuminati group that claims to have started the French, Russian, and American revolutions. As you may know, there has been a battle going on over the future of this planet.
Back in May of 2021, I was exposed to a bizarre conspiracy community that makes flat earthers look reasonable by comparison. Unlike a lot of conspiracy theories, which tend to have a small degree of truth, which is often extrapolated into outright fiction, this conspiracy theory is based on nothing but pure fantasy. Imagine if someone told you they lived out the plot of the movie Total Recall, that they thought they were living a regular life until one day they recovered memories of being a secret agent fighting an evil organization on Mars.
Dun dun dun.
Now, what if they also said that they were a space marine who fought insectoid and reptilian extraterrestrials on different...
This guy's just combining all of the sci-fi, all of it, all the sci-fi.
...planets. And finally, what if they capped it all off by claiming to be G.I. Joe?
Oh, man.
If you ever encounter someone like this, it's possible...
What is he doing? What is this guy? Hold on, I gotta see that again. I don't even think he has his hand on the trigger. Like, what the fuck?
If you ever encounter someone like
put
this, it's possible that they believe that they are part of the secret space program. The secret space program is a conspiracy theory which has grown in popularity within the past decade. There are YouTube channels, social media groups, and entire conferences dedicated to a shared belief that humanity has already traveled to the far reaches of space.
It's fucking Stargate, like secret organization that is hidden by the government that has traveled across numerous star systems.
And that a shadowy world government has been hiding this truth from the masses. A lot of the people who buy into this theory also believe that they were abducted and forced to serve in the secret space program against masses. A lot of the
White House denies
people
CIA
who buy into this theory
Obama
also believe that they were
Mars.
abducted.
What the? People will believe anything, I swear to God.
And forced to serve in the secret space program against their will. This isn't a LARP, or an ARG, or a giant sci-fi influenced role-playing game. No. These people genuinely believe this stuff.
I kind of want to start a role-playing game based on this. That sounds kind of fun.
And their community is getting bigger by the day. I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years, this overtakes Flat Earth as the most ridiculed conspiracy theory by the general population. And that's because it's way, way crazier.
Sounds pretty crazy.
I was put onto this by a friend of mine who goes by the handle Vapes for Christ. Here's us talking about it on a Discord call.
So, I was listening to this podcast called The Unexplained of Howard Hughes. Basically, the UK's equivalent to Coast to Coast. It's on the radio as well. And they just had this one guy in there I saw. His name was Captain Randy Kramer. He was saying stuff like he was actually a genetically enhanced super soldier made in a lab.
It's fucking Captain America, everybody. Or Captain UK, I guess. I don't know.
In the late 1960s for a secret space program where he'd be battling aliens on Mars for the Mars Defense Force. And the more I looked into this, he's not alone. There's a whole community of people that claim they've also been part of this program.
Randy lived on the planet Mars for 17 years, where he said there were approximately 6...
Allegedly lived on Mars. Oh my god.
7 million people living, including various ET races.
So I was genetically engineered from the ground up, tinkered with some extraterrestrial hybridized DNA to, be smarter, faster, stronger for soldiering abilities, where I spent...
Prove it. I want to see him bend a bar, a metal bar or something like that. I want to hear him do something how you got to prove it, right?
A little over 17 years in the MDF, which is the Mars Defense Force. I was in the infantry there on the ground, mostly scuffling with indigenous reptoids and indigenous insectoids.
Indigenous means that they are from Mars. Okay.
Territorially, mostly really to test military equipment.
There are a lot of interesting characters in the SSP/Super Soldier world, such as Dwight Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, James Casbolt, a self-proclaimed former MI6 agent who's
holy shit,
who's now in prison for trying to blackmail 2 million euros out of his Supercenter heiress ex-wife, Haley Major, and Mark Richards, who's also in prison, not for blackmail this time, but instead for robbery and murder in the mid-1980s. He was also bizarrely plotting a paramilitary takeover of his county in order to turn it into king.
Man, if QAnon co-ops these guys, they have a lot of new material. Man.
Arthur's court with himself as a king? Yeah, that's a thing. Within the community, these people are known as whistleblowers, individuals who risk their lives to disclose sensitive information about their time in the secret space program. Initially, I was struck by how these so-called whistleblowers spoke with such earnestness while claiming to have lived out grand stories akin to Z-grade science fiction. And more strikingly was how many people seemed to believe them.
There is a secret space program which is funded by our taxes. We pay for our own enslavement. There are factions in space. They have anti-gravity propulsion system, anything you can think of, time travel.
Oh man, this is fucking wackadoo, man. These guys are out there
manipulating consciousness. It's all real.
When I first started looking to this community, I considered making a video about it, but I scrapped the idea fairly quickly. At the time, my idea was to make a video simply exploring the whistleblowers and the conspiracy theory, but I decided against it as I was more in the mood to work on something more ambitious and grand. So I set it aside and worked on a handful of other projects instead. However, there was a part of me that kept thinking about it. I found myself watching SSP videos during my free time, reading articles and browsing their community's forums. Eventually, it became my favorite pastime, and it was something that I was doing every single day. And what really intrigued me about it was it just kept getting crazier and crazier. And that's how I found my new favorite YouTube channel, Super Soldier Talk, which is run by a guy named James Rank. He's been doing it for 13 years, and he's been a hardcore believer of it for even longer than that. I found myself really drawn to James, especially his demeanor. I don't mean to ridicule the guy, but I genuinely just find him amusing.
So I am a super soldier. I've been involved in these the secret space program for at least 330.
Can these guys show any proof that they're super soldiers? Do they... I want to see them, excuse me, do some Captain America shit or something like that. I want to see them like shoot a rifle or a sniper rifle from like a mile away and hit somebody directly in the
30
head.
years. I say that with a lot of hesitation because some of these projects, they have time compression zones where you're outside of time and the time is going by a little bit slower than the rest of reality. They use re-aging tech, different cloning bodies. There's different techniques on how they can re-age us and reuse us. I spent at least 75 years on Mars.
Anyway, James runs the most popular YouTube channel in the community. It consists of interviews he conducts with secret space program experiencers from around the world. The guests on James' show all claim to be victims of the secret space program. The roles that they were assigned to in the secret space program vary. Some are shapeshifters.
So today we have David Lotherington, who is an Akashic reader, healer, and telepath. And he also remembers being in a facility that trained his shapeshifting abilities, in which I was also a participant of. He recalls experiences as a super...
Can he do it? I want to see him like turn into a fucking dinner plate or something. Or like a stereo.
super soldier in Kruger and has done training missions with zombies and vampires.
Well, there was one kid that turned into a turtle. There was another...
Did he say zombies and vampires? Fuck, man. They're taking every bit of science fiction and just fucking throwing it in there and stirring it up like a fucking hodgepodge.
Female that turned into an eagle, and that was used for surveillance.
Eagles!
I myself was a blue wolf. There was another being that turned into a cat.
Others are cyborgs and off-world medics.
Oh, I mean, I started working on Mars. I was looking for bugs, they call them, mostly mantises. Mantises were really good at genetics, and they wanted like information from them.
Like the same mantises that are here, or are these different mantises? Are they connected in some way?
Stuff like that, genetic information.
And there's even She-Hulks.
Both dolphins and hulks, we can go through walls, go through portals. We can echolocate, but some people call it bilocation.
I quickly realized that most of the people James interviews don't actually have any celebrity status within the secret space program community. They're nothing like Corey Good, who sells out venues for his talks. Instead, they are just average believers in the SSP conspiracy who somehow got connected with James and were subsequently invited onto his show. Upon realizing this, I started to formulate a plan. What if I made up a story about being in the secret space program and get onto James' show and share it with his community? And that's how I finally found an angle that compelled me enough to make a video.
Nice. This is gonna get good.
About this topic. And the angle was to become a secret space program whistleblower myself.
Let's do it.
Rock. So if my
I want to do some shit like this.
Goal still sounds too vague to you. I set up a criteria for how I was going to accomplish it. A set of rules, if you will. 1. Make up a compelling story about my time in the secret space program, which has to follow the established lore of the conspiracy. 2. Get onto a major platform within the community as a whistleblower and share my experience. I developed this criteria after thinking what's required to become an SSP whistleblower. Obviously, evidence of being in the secret space program isn't necessary at all. All that's needed is a story which follows the lore, and, after that, I just have to appear on a major platform and share it. I decided that I would aim to appear on James's channel. Like I said, it's the most popular YouTube channel in the community, and it's even had the illustrious Captain Randy Kramer on it twice. Unlike Captain Randy Kramer, or Corey Good, I was unlikely to get my own show on Gaia.
He's a captain. Probably pretty learned in the SSP.
So I settled for a more manageable, but still difficult task. To increase the difficulty, I chose not to use my own YouTube channel as a way to influence my way onto the show. Therefore, I needed to find a way to ingratiate myself with James, and hope that he decided to invite me on as a guest himself. Before I did that, I needed to create a compelling story. In order to craft my narrative, I began to study
this guy's a badass.
The plethora of interviews available on Jay's channel, as well as the SSP lore extensively. Okay, open up your textbooks.
it's time for me to start explaining the lore behind the secret space program. Now, I'm going to try and do this as fast as possible. Okay, so it started right before World War II, when the Nazis were interested in mysticism.
Before World War II, the Nazis, who were interested in mysticism and alternative views, searched the planet for fantastical powers.
Yeah. I've always been kind of interested in that a little bit, like the Nazi mysticism stuff. It's kind of crazy, like, just shows how, like, out there these guys
found
were.
Maria Orsak, a medium and leader of the Vril Society, who channeled Nordic and Draco reptilians who offered the Nazis the semantics behind anti-gravity technology and UFOs. The Draco reptilians told the Nazis about ancient alien technology hidden in Antarctica, and in...
That's fucking straight out of Stargate, man. The ancient weapon in Antarctica.
1938, the Nazis traveled there. With this newfound tech, the Nazis created the Die Glocke, aka the Bell, which was capable of space and time travel. In 1942, the Nazis were already in space.
I've seen that.
There they built a base on the dark side of the moon. And by 1950, the Nazis were on Mars. Despite having access to this advanced alien tech, the Germans still lost World War II because apparently the Germans who possessed the technology did not agree with Hitler's regime, so there was a split.
The new Schwabenländers didn't want to support Hitler at the end of the war because they considered him insane and the final solution.
Oh, he was insane. Well, what? I think you're all a little bit crazy.
So there was already a split.
In SSP lore, the Nazis capable of space and time travel became the Fourth Reich, and they pissed off to Antarctica in space while refusing to provide any support to the Third Reich Nazis during the war. Anyway, the evil globalists, i.e. the Cabal and the Illuminati or something, engaged in a Cold War against the Space Germans. Meanwhile, the Space Germans were also fighting the Draco reptilians and various alien life forms.
I thought they were friends with the Draco reptilians. These crazy space Germans.
In space. The Antarctic/Space Germans would be responsible for abducting people to serve in joint black projects between themselves, the Cabal, aliens, and pretty much anybody with any power at all. This was the beginning of the secret space program. By the 1960s, the Space Germans created Notwaffen, aka Dark Fleet, and began an aggressive expansion out into the solar system, setting up bases on moons.
So, there's a Nazi background to the secret space program. This is just getting more and more awesome, I'm telling you.
Around Saturn, the Kuiper belts, and etc. Capable of time travel, the Space Germans also traveled back in time to settle on planets around the galaxy.
Now there's 3 billion people, humans, that live off-world under various German SSP groups protected by the Notwaffen, translated meaning Dark Fleet.
People who are forced into the secret space program are called MILABs, aka military abductees.
Huh?
These people are chosen because they are special and often because they are psychically gifted in some way. Around 30% of MILABs are SSP officers, and 70% of them are used as slaves.
Well, that's kind of fucked up. I guess after all the amazing technology that they've gathered, and the vast knowledge that they gathered, slavery is still cool.
Individuals are abducted and could be used as just about anything in the SSP. Super soldiers, pilots, remote viewers, assassins, scientists, forced laborers, and even slaves.
Sex slaves.
So, there you have it. That's a basic breakdown of the SSP lore. After spending months putting together my very own secret space program whistleblower testimony, I felt like I was ready to share it on James' show. The only problem was that he wasn't replying to any of my emails. But then I found an in. On his website was a page called My Lab Recovery Network, which was a list of people offering services to help recover secret space program related memories. At the top of the list was James. And for $200 USD, I could book a guided meditation regression session with him, which is exactly what I did at 6 a.m. on September 1st, 2021. Within 23 minutes, James got back to me with an email which read, "Hi Oki, I'm booked till the first week in October. Can I put you down for Tuesday, October 12 at an afternoon slot or..."
This guy's a grifter like a motherfucker. He's like making money off of people. Oh my God. Oh God, I'm in the wrong business.
Evening time slot, EST zone. Which would you prefer? By booking a hypnosis session with him, at least I had an in. It didn't mean that I would be invited onto a show, but it was a start. In order to ensure that I can get onto a show, I fine-tuned my story. I knew that my only option was to put on such a performance that it completely knocks him off of his feet. So for the next 41 days, I hunkered down and recited my script while polishing it all into something truly compelling. And finally, the day arrived.
This guy's dedicated.
At 1 p.m. EST on October 12th, I got the Zoom call invite from James that I was waiting for. Our session lasted for 2 hours and 14 minutes. The results of the session exceeded my expectations.
I would be curious. What is your genetic background? Like, what ET groups are you connected with?
Draco reptilian humanoid hybrid, and then I think I also got like Anunnaki, and then.
Oh, I know all about the Anunnaki, man. There's some crazy ancient aliens stuff about Mesopotamians that's very interesting. If you ever get a chance, there's a book called the 10th Planet. Is that right? Yeah. The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin. Highly recommended, entertaining read.
Do you know who you might have been in a past life?
Have you heard like the Black Samurai Yasuke?
You were a samurai?
Yeah. Dude, hold on. I'll show you something. Check this out.
That's pretty dope. And I was a gladiator.
Oh no, that's awesome.
The goal here, I want us to take us into hyperspace. Let's put a gold shield of light around us. So at this point, we call upon Oki's higher self to overwrite any kind of AI. Begin to relax your forehead and your cheeks, and you can breathe just fine in and out as the relaxation goes down into your legs. As you fly through the clouds, the puffy clouds.
The puffy clouds. This guy is not a trained hypnotherapist. I guarantee it. Like, oh my God, what a grifter.
Jump around a little bit. Your higher self already knows where to go. So go ahead. When you're ready, step on through the door, and without putting any kind of conscious thought into it, just imagine what do you think would be behind that door. So let's start with that. And tell me what you see.
I see Kevin Spacey, or his clone.
That was awesome. Fuck yeah, Kevin Spacey. He got in some trouble though, didn't he, guys? He had Me Too.
Paul Serene, he was on the governing council of the ICC. So his clone is Kevin Spacey.
We're in a gymnasium. It's me and at least 100 other. I think they're recruits.
Do you see anyone else there that you recognize?
I think I see the YouTuber Mr. Beast.
Today.
What the fuck, man?
We will be planting 20 million trees.
Okay, so they're probably programming him. So he's the guy that doesn't he like give away a bunch of free stuff on the videos?
Yeah.
They must have looked into his future and okay, so whatever trajectory, whatever plans they had for him was all programming stuff.
Anyway, the session was a success.
It was.
Such a success that I got what I wanted. James invited me onto his show. Then he mentioned that it would be a little while before he could have me on his show because he was going to attend a secret space program conference taking place in early November. Without a second thought, I said that I'd be there.
Do you want to come on my show to share some of your experiences?
Yeah, hell yeah. That'd be awesome.
If you're coming out to Vegas, I could, maybe give you 45 minutes.
He's grifting the grifter. This is so awesome, guys. Like, I love to see people, like, really call motherfuckers like this
So a few days later, I traveled to Las Vegas and landed at around 12 p.m. after a 4-hour plane ride.
And of course, it's held in Vegas.
I'm here in Las Vegas for Cosmic Consciousness in Disclosure 5D events, specifically to meet some super soldiers. People who are part of this, who believe.
He needs to make them do stuff like kill people with their minds and
that
shit.
They are part of the secret space
or hurt people with their minds.
Program. This has been months in the making. Okay, this is gonna be fun, dude. I am so excited for this. Are you ready, Night Docs?
I'm as ready as I am gonna be, man. This is going to be an exercise in patience for me.
Right? I would think the same.
Molten Nugget.
We're here.
Nugget, here we are.
Hell yeah.
I guess we're gonna go learn how to become stronger through genetics.
And experience this up on the starship. I've been there several times. I spoke with the commander, the Arcturian commander, who I am connected to.
These people are wackadoo.
They flew us to a separate base. We left this base and we went to a separate one on the moon, and it was U.S. military personnel. And the next morning they gave...
I wonder how many of these people actually believe this shit, and how many of them are just like, oh, you know, doing the same thing this kid is, but like trying to get into a community. Or maybe they're just bored, or maybe just lonely, and they just need somebody to come and be part of their life. They're like, I hope the aliens will come.
It was a set of clothes to wear and put us on a larger craft and flew us to Mars. Flew out, we got away from the moon and immediately jumped to Mars.
Yes, I was talking about this concert, this Travis Scott concert, where 800 people were injected with these drone mosquitoes.
Oh, fuck. They brought Travis Scott into it. That's fucking great.
You know, you see that, wow, they can go around and inject people.
The conference was a pretty fun but disorganized event. The two workshops we were really looking forward to attending were How to Become a Jedi Warrior and Quantum Spoon Bending, Bring Your Own Spoon.
Tomorrow's going to be a fun day because tomorrow we get to go to How to Become a Jedi Warrior.
All right.
I'm excited about that one.
That's going to be amazing.
Fortunately, when we showed up to the How to Become a Jedi Warrior workshop, no one was there, not even the speaker. So it was canceled.
We just got in here. We have no idea where anybody is. I think you're right. I think the guy just gave up.
Yeah. Next.
There is no conference.
So the best part tomorrow is we are going to go to Quantum Spoon Bending, parentheses, Bring Your Own Spoons, close parentheses.
And the quantum spoon bending lesson was underwhelming since, instead of learning how to bend a spoon with our minds, we were instructed to physically do it with both hands.
Magical power.
But the conference was secondary to my ultimate goal, which was to meet James so he can interview me for his channel. It was during a workshop called My Life in the Secret Space Program that I finally got to meet him. Honestly, I felt sort of starstruck. I asked him to sign my copy of his book, and we talked for a bit before the workshop started. While walking around the venue, I noticed that James had sent me a text inviting me to his hotel room for an interview. Suddenly, a wave of anticipation and euphoria washed over me. This was it. Finally, after several months, the moment I was waiting for had arrived. I ran back.
He successfully infiltrated the SSP.
Back to the workshop room, found Night Docs, and alerted him of the new development. We scrambled to get all of his equipment ready to film the interview and to get to Jay's hotel room as soon as possible. Time was of the essence. Therefore, being late was not an option. Night Docs, who was behind me, was still trying to attach his camera to a gimbal, which would not fit. Watching the minutes go by was excruciating. Eventually, I told him to leave the camera unattached from the gimbal, and we raced towards the elevator, getting lost a couple times along the way. After an elevator ride that felt way longer than it
This music's so, like, intense.
should have, we rushed towards James' hotel room before realizing that we walked in the wrong direction once again. Then we beelined it in the opposite direction, and finally found James' room. I knocked. Time had finally come. James had his camera equipment set up in the corner of the hotel room. He instructed me to take a seat in front of his camera and microphone. I asked him if it was okay if Night Docs filmed the interview, and he said it was fine. After a brief preliminary discussion, James started recording and we were underway. By then, any nervous anticipation I felt leading up to this face-to-face sit-down had completely dissipated. I was calm, knowing that I was more than prepared to speak about my time in the secret space program in a convincing manner. The interview lasted 1 hour, and here's what happened.
My God.
Okay, so my name is Oki. So it started from before I was even born, where they genetically enhanced my DNA. And by the time I was 6, I was put into a special program run by Monarch. I was under the direct tutelage of Pulse Ring, Kevin Spacey's clone. There was 12 children
tutelage, guys,
who were trained directly under him, including myself and
Dun, dun,
the
dun.
YouTuber Mr. Beast.
So, can you comment about what you, or maybe Mr. Beast, or maybe the people in your group were all being groomed for?
We were pretty much put in a top elite special program. They pretty much utilized every method they could to use MK Ultra programming and to create killing machines. And I was able to...
MK Ultra too, they're like fucking hodgepodging all of these things together. It's so amazing.
Just look at a photo of a target and make their head explode. Because, I mean, there was billions of dollars spent on each and every single one of us. I particularly liked my psionic katana. I liked my my 2 daggers.
Ooh, I want a psionic katana.
I had a form of EMP that I could take out their technologies. In my past life, I was Yasuke, the Black Samurai.
Did any of your clones ever get changed into a zombie?
I had a clone. That clone actually was fighting zombies and vampires, and
damn, fighting zombies and vampires too. Was it like Yasuke, the fucking Black Samurai fighting zombies? That's a great movie right there.
There was also Yetis that they were fighting.
What about vampires? Do you recall any scenarios fighting vampires?
But this particular thing, this is something I learned about vampires actually, is that they can't help but count. From what I remember most closely is that I do have many different clones of myself with parts of my consciousness uploaded into those clones. I was taken, I was cloned, and my clones with my consciousness inside of them.
This is awesome, guys.
Were used pretty much as like kamikaze pilots.
I wonder if this guy finds out that this kid's like just fucking like pulling one over on him.
Typically, at least what I heard, black people require a different protocol of brainwashing.
Oh, and it brought in the racism! Yes! Gotta bring in the racism! Woohoo! Now it's fully fledged, man. Now we can put it in the QAnon. Fit it right in there.
Time flew by, and I was struck by the effortlessness of retelling the story which I crafted. I spoke for 1 hour with ease and told my story so coherently that I realized that if I was to continue to pursue a career as an influencer in the SSP community, I'd be able to become a prominent whistleblower. I could do workshops, sell books, charge for hypnosis sessions, be invited onto shows, and attend conferences as a speaker, just like the top members of the community. I would be able to mold a career out of it, which likely could be far more profitable than spending months making YouTube documentaries and releasing them only a few times a year. When I first became interested in the community and its major players, I wondered how these people could regurgitate their own bullshit with such ease, as if their lies didn't affect them at all. Were they deluded, or were they capitalizing on feeding lies to a fantasy-prone audience? And when I was being interviewed by James, I finally understood it. What you believe becomes your own reality, no matter how ridiculous it is. Spewing the nonsense story I crafted was like an out-of-body experience. I was playing a role. And even though I created the role, while I was performing it, it was like a switch in my brain went off and everything I said felt real. For that moment, I managed to delude myself and speak matter-of-fact.
Gotta have a good imagination for that shit, I guess.
About being trained by Kevin Spacey's clone along with Mr. Beast. I never broke character. I never felt like laughing or winking at the camera. I spoke stone-faced with deadly seriousness the whole time. It was so easy to detach myself from the situation and make it feel real. Overall, this whole journey has been a fascinating experience. I now feel as though many of the questions I had about charlatans, grifters, con men, and even cult leaders starting to make more sense. By stepping into their shoes, I feel like I gained insight into how they operate and what makes them tick. Like I said, if I wanted to, I could have continued to masquerade as a secret space program whistleblower and turn my lies into something truly profitable. Of course, I have no interest in doing so.
Yeah. Good for you, man. Good for you.
Enhanced my DNA, and they took the DNA from my father and they put it in my mother, and they were keeping tabs on me. And by the time I was 6, I was into a special program run by Monarch. The leader of Monarch, Paul Serene, also known as Kevin Spacey's clone.
So on December 28th, 2021, James finally uploaded the interview we did in Las Vegas onto his YouTube channel.
Look, he's a Vosh
As I
watcher.
record this, the video is sitting around.
Also known as Kevin Spacey's clone.
So on December 28th, 2021, James finally uploaded the interview we did in Las Vegas onto his YouTube channel. As I record this, the video is sitting around 13,000 views. The response from his community has been overwhelmingly positive. People left comments that indicate that they completely believed me. A couple people said that I was the best whistleblower testimony that they've heard on James's channel so far. And one person even said that they cried the whole way through the video.
Oh my god.
So that's that. I made up a story and officially got it to James's channel. I can now officially call myself a secret space program whistleblower. An elite among elites. A space samurai, MKUltra victim who was trained by Kevin Spacey's clone to become a killing machine. If you want to watch the full interview I had with Jay as well as our hypnosis session, please subscribe
that was
to my Patreon.
amazing.
Otherwise, follow me on social media. I have Twitter, which I'm the most active on, Instagram, and a subreddit.
Gosh.
All links can be...
That was freaking great, guys. Oh my god, that just made my night. So, yeah. Like I said, I only had a couple hours to stream tonight, but I wanted to get it in. Thanks, guys, for tuning in with me, and I'm gonna have some clips of this up later on YouTube. Tomorrow, I believe I'm going to be editing a lot of videos, so there'll be lots of stuff up there for you guys to see. If you didn't catch it in the live stream itself. Yeah. So, I think the next time I'm streaming will be Friday. We're going to do a long stream that day. I'm probably going to start, I don't know. We'll probably start somewhere around 6, maybe. And I want to do a longer stream, maybe go till 1 in the morning, but we'll see. We'll see how much energy I have, how much fucking vibes I have, to get through that all. But thanks for joining me, guys. That's going to be it for me today. Make sure you're staying safe. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves and your family. And yeah, let's see you again on Friday. Have fun, everyone.